All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Saturday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great weekend. We're going to do a little bit of a mailbag. We're entering into a little bit of a funky phase of the conference finals. Now that Tyrese Halliburton is out of the lineup, we are not going live tonight. We're going to be reacting to Game 3 of Pacers-Celtics on Sunday morning. So I figured let's bounce around the league and hit a mailbag. I tweeted out a request for mailbag questions earlier today. We had 84 questions come in. Can't hit all of them, obviously, but I picked 20 of them out. So we're going to hit 20 of those questions. I appreciate all of you guys for dropping those mailbag questions in there. Hopefully, over the course of the next few months in the offseason, we'll be able to get to all of your guys' questions as we're looking to kill some time over the course of the summer, right? You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight, and to keep dropping mailbag questions in those YouTube comments. All right, let's talk some basketball. First question. Jason, for as much praise as you have given Anthony Edwards this postseason, and rightfully so, how much blame does he wear for the way this series has gone so far? And have his performances over the last 5 games moved the needle back in the other direction for you at all? He does deserve a good amount of the blame in the sense that the responsibility that comes with being the best player on your team as you're embarking on the goal of winning an NBA championship, your job is to try to solve the problems that your opponent presents you, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. Like, you're the head of the snake. You're the guy that has to figure out how to dissect their defense, right? Now, the main difference between what Dallas brings to the table and Denver and Phoenix is rim protection, right? Now, there's 2 ways to beat rim protection. One is a shooting big, right? If you have we talked about this in the film session for Game 2, but kind of like LeBron teams over the years would try to create space for LeBron with shooting bigs, right? Chris Bosh when they moved him to the center, Kevin Love in Cleveland, Anthony Davis in 2020 when he was shooting the ball as well as he was. They tried to create space for LeBron using a shooting center so that they can mitigate rim protection, right? With Luka, he does it with lob threats, right? So for him, those are big guys that can't shoot, but what he does is he's a manipulative passer, meaning he's really good at getting an advantage, usually getting the defender trapped on his backside, which effectively operates as a 4-on-3 because he's working downhill. And from there, he's trying to bait either the low man or the rim protector into committing one way or the other. And in that 3-on-2, there's an opening, and he picks you apart with passing from there. And so for Anthony Edwards, especially given the predicament with Minnesota's roster, they're probably not going to get rid of Rudy Gobert, right? So for him, the next step is figuring out how to be a manipulative passer in pick and roll. And that's something that will take time. Again, he is only 22 years old. And so to the second part of your question, have his performances over the last 5 games moved the needle back in the other direction for you at all? Denver, I go the other way. They were just straight up double teaming him all the time. Like, it's difficult to do damage in those sorts of situations. And Minnesota's offense looked great, especially in the second half of Game 7, even though Ant wasn't making shots because he was consistently drawing double teams. So I don't look at that so much as a negative for Ant. This series, though, has exposed that he just still has some time to get to where he needs to go. So, like, maybe we've jumped the gun a little bit about how soon this kind of arrival of Anthony Edwards as potentially the face of the league will come, but I still think it's coming. It's just a matter of when, and I think that this series has just revealed that there are still some steps for him in his player development that he has to figure out before he can get to that point. This was a really interesting one that I got. Is it me, or does Luka and Jalen Brunson play the same way, but Luka is just bigger and obviously better? I thought this was a great comp because Jalen Brunson does remind me of Luka in the sense that it's just this relentless set of moves and counter moves that are built towards, like, I'll hit 4 or 5 moves and just wait for the defender to make some sort of mistake with their footwork, and then I'm turning the corner, in the sense that Jalen Brunson isn't necessarily in any sort of physical advantage when he's looking to attack off the bounce, but he just finds a way to get to his spots. And so what makes Luka a much better version of that is his size and strength that he brings to the table. But I do think there are a ton of similarities in some of, like, the start-stop change of pace stuff with Jalen Brunson, the selling every move with every part of his body in terms of body language to sell moves. I loved that comp. I thought that was a really, really interesting mailbag question. Third one. If it's Celtics versus Mavs in the finals, as it's looking that way, who would you put on Luka and on Kyrie if you're Boston? So I don't think they're going to start with Tatum on Luka, but I do think that's the direction this series will eventually need to go if we end up with Dallas-Boston. Luka is the only player remaining in the playoffs that has the physical tools to actually deal with some of the stuff that Luka does in terms of his size and strength. Now, it's going to be a weird series because, again, Boston does a ton of switching, and Luka finds a way to get you onto trail position, right? But Jason Tatum trailing Luka Doncic and back pressuring is an entirely different physical challenge than Jaden McDaniels, because Jason Tatum is built like a truck up top and Jaden is just not. And so I do think that eventually that series will tilt towards Jason Tatum on the ball. My guess is that they'll start with somebody else. They'll probably start with Jaylen Brown on Luka, and my guess is that they'll start with Derek White on Kyrie Irving. It's possible that Drew Holiday gets looks there as well, but I think Derek's length would be a little bit more impactful on the pull-up shooting. But again, everyone's going to see time on Luka. Jaylen Brown will see time on Luka. Tatum will see time on Luka. And then Derek White and Drew Holiday will both see time on Kyrie Irving over the course of the series. And again, we'll get into more detail on that series preview when we get there. Next question. If the Nuggets had closed Game 7 at home, who would have won between Dallas and Denver? Couple of things here. Every team, and trust me, I just saw this last year with Denver, and I just saw it the year before with Golden State, and I just saw it the year before with the Bucks. It is totally normal for a team to win a championship or to have some success and then suddenly feel like they're invincible in terms of their fan base, right? Here's the thing. I don't think any team is head and shoulders above the rest of the league. Everyone's kind of on a similar level. And so a lot of this stuff is matchup based. So here's the thing. Let's just talk about what a Denver-Dallas series would have looked like. Would Dallas have been able to cause some problems for Denver's defense? Absolutely. Luka's a elite offensive initiator. He absolutely would have manipulated Aaron Gordon on the back line and manipulated Nikola Jokic in ball screens. That also would have probably ended with Aaron Gordon on the ball, which puts you in a predicament where your backline size is pretty small. But on the other end of the floor, Denver is so much more equipped to attack Dallas's defense than Minnesota is. Not only because Jokic would bully Lively and bully Gafford, but also because as Dallas is a load-up defense that likes to defend pick and roll 3-on-2 and really load up the strong side and leave shooting on the weak side, Denver is a team that has elite weak side shooting and gets the ball to those guys when that's the read that's available on the offensive end of the floor. So you guys know how high I was on Denver. I probably would have picked Denver over Dallas had they made it to this round. Who knows what would have happened? I personally still feel like Denver probably would have beat Dallas if they faced in a playoff series. But again, it's all matchups. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Who at the end of the day, there's 8 teams that come out of the West every year. And out of those 8 teams, you're going to have 4 of them are going to get eliminated in the first round. 2 more are going to get eliminated in the second round. So sometimes you just get to the conference finals and you get favorable matchups. That's just how it goes. And again, you have to get lucky to win a championship, right? You have to get lucky. And if you build a team to beat Denver like Minnesota does, it's going to have other issues. And all of that defensive personnel that they put together has now caused problems for them on the offensive end of the floor against Dallas. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with Dallas's current situation. You don't get their hypotheticals do not have anything to do with the Larry O'Brien trophy. You either get the Larry O'Brien trophy or you don't. And so if you win, no one's going to come back. If you beat if you beat Minnesota and then you go and you beat Boston in the next round, no one's going to come back to you and be like, or if anybody does come back to you and say something like, oh, well, you didn't beat Denver, that's not taking the trophy away from you. The trophy would be yours forever, right? So again, it's a hypothetical. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I think the matchup is fundamentally different, and I probably would have picked Denver in a series against Dallas. Do you find it difficult to enjoy watching a game when you are dissecting the teams play? Or do you find that to be more enjoyable because you understand the game so well? Here's the thing. When I'm watching a big game like last night, I always am having fun. I enjoy watching the games every single time because I'm just a huge basketball fan. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that sometimes, especially this time of year, I don't get a little just exhausted. I mean, today's a perfect example of that. I feel like my brain is just fried and I'm having trouble talking sometimes. It's just, I've been going every day for a month and a half now. And more than once, we've been going, we've probably done between the film sessions, the mailbags, and the shows, we've probably done like 12 to 13 separate shows per week for the past literally like 5-6 weeks, right? So like we've been doing just a lot of work. So like I'm worn down, obviously, and I'm ready for it to get a little bit lighter. And so like I'd be lying to you guys if I didn't say that sometimes I need a day off. So for instance, today, like after I get done with this mailbag, like I'm taking tonight off and I'm hanging out with some friends and I'm gonna have a couple beers and sit out by the pool and try to relax, and it's going to be nice because I haven't done that in a while, right? But that said, like I always feel very fortunate to be able to do this for a living, and absolutely when I'm watching the games, I never find myself not enjoying the basketball. The basketball is always fun. It's more just, putting the time and effort in to like do the research, to watch all the film, to dig into the numbers and find stats that I find interesting, and to put a show together, and then to get in front of the camera and put it all together. Like obviously that can be tiring from time to time, but like I always enjoy watching the games. Seeing how Dallas has exploited Minnesota's weaknesses, how do you think the Lakers would have competed in a 7-game series with the Wolves? Well, again, towards matchups, a couple of very similar things between Dallas and the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers have rim protection, right? Like they've got a lot of size on that front line with Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. 2, Jaden McDaniels is struggling to guard Luka. Why? Because Luka has size and strength on him. LeBron James would have those exact same advantages versus Jaden McDaniels, right? So like I would have probably picked the Lakers versus the Wolves. Hell, I told you guys that multiple times over the course of the regular season. I would have picked the Lakers versus the Thunder. I would have picked them versus Minnesota. I would not have picked them against the Clippers. I would not have picked them against Denver. Because the Clippers can switch, and switching is a weakness for that Laker offense. And then Denver obviously just has every single conceivable mismatch to cause the Lakers issues, right? So like the Dallas would have been an interesting matchup, and because they're two very similar teams, and it would have been interesting to see those two teams compete. And I don't know what I would have picked between the Lakers and Dallas, but yeah, I would have picked the Lakers versus the Timberwolves for all of the same reasons that I talked about over the course of the regular season. We're this close to crowning a new NBA champ, and with the action heating up on the court, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. There's only so many games left, and DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out, or you'll have to wait until next NBA season to place your bets. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your squad, and place your first bet. It's that simple. The championship odds right now, as we head into the conference finals, according to DraftKings, Boston's at -150, the Timberwolves at +275, the Mavericks at +500, and the Indiana Pacers, a long shot, at +2,500. New to DraftKings, listen up. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. Just deposit at least $5, and you'll get a bonus bet back equal to your first bet if it doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Can you explain to the casual watchers how Luka and Harden's style of play is drastically different than prime LeBron? Because I'm tired of seeing people say that it's the same thing. I'm actually going to take this a step further. I think all three of those guys are very different. I think there are some similarities between Luka and James Harden in the sense that they will really get into spamming action, possession after possession after possession after possession for large stretches of games, right? Like Luka, it's like everything is spread, pick and roll, or ISO, right? They'll run some more complicated actions, like they ran a lot of double drag last night. Like they're going to do some stuff that is a little bit more complicated, but they're big into spamming actions. And then Luka and James Harden would both dribble just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times per game. LeBron would do that for spurts in his prime, where he'd be like, I'm going to take over heliocentric for this 5-minute stretch when I feel like there's a matchup that I like, or in crunch time. But LeBron was always much more willing to just be a screener for a while, or play off the ball for a while, or like, let me work out of LeBron will just change his approach far more frequently and was a little bit more versatile in that respect. The difference between Luka and James Harden, it was a step back three or a driving layup towards his left-hand side. He was super, super predictable on the offensive end of the floor, which is why he fell apart when he would get to the postseason. Like only towards the end of his career did he add that little floater when he would face rim protection, right? But like that made him easy to guard. Luka is so different from James Harden because he can play out of the post. He does work out of the mid-range a ton. Everything for him looks different. And so defenders can't like solve him. He solves defenders. Whereas with James Harden, the defenders would solve James Harden. So like all three of them are different to me. But the main difference between LeBron and those two just has to do with how frequently he plays heliocentric basketball. And the main difference between Luka and James Harden is just the diversity of their approach on offense. How come you did not anticipate Luka outplaying Ant, given Luka's Game 5 and 6 performances versus OKC and the Mavs' paint defense, especially with Ant not being the mid-range assassin that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is? It was all about the injury. I never thought Ant was better than Luka. I did a player rankings with the Nerd Sesh guys before the series last week on Friday. You guys can go find it. It's on our feed. And it's the one that says top 5 players. In that video, I put Luka number 2 behind Nikola Jokic. I don't think Ant is better than Luka. I was just worried about Luka's knee, and I thought he got a little banged up by Lou Dort in that series, and so I was worried against this oppressive Minnesota defense if it would be an issue for Luka in terms of just his health. That said, like I called out most of the stuff you see in this series, I called out beforehand in terms of like specific basketball dynamics. Like I said, Lou Dort is a very different defensive player than Jaden McDaniels. Lou Dort is built like a linebacker. Jaden's more skinny. I think Luka will have some success against him with his size. Said that before game 1. I said rim protection for Dallas is very different than Denver. That could present some problems for Anthony Edwards. I literally said that before the series. Like I picked Minnesota because I thought their defense would have more impact, and I thought Ant would be able to, even with the rim protection, still have some success in the paint. They've shut him off. He's had 2 made field goals in the paint through 2 games. And so again, like I was wrong, but like I also never pick. I pick teams before a series because I have to. It's my job. Like I'm expected to provide a pick, right? But like most of these are coin flips to me. Most of them are coin flips. And like I came into the series, I saw 2 really good teams in Minnesota and Dallas. And like given all of these different advantages for both teams and given really shitty regular season evidence, like we never saw PJ Washington or Gafford play for Dallas in the regular season. Luka and Kyrie only played in one of the games against Minnesota. Like all that data was useless. So we're basically guessing. And so I made a guess, and then I saw about a game and a half of this series. And then I was like, nope. Minnesota can't win the series because now I've seen what's happened and we have more information to operate on. But like, again, like I make a prediction because I have to, but I'm not in the prediction business. If I was in the prediction business, I'd be a gambler. And by the way, gamblers make money by getting about 55% of the picks right. So they're wrong 45% of the time. So it's completely absurd to expect that I'm just going to get up here and pick every single series correctly. That just isn't how it works. I'm an analyst. My job is to try to interpret what's happening in the games and try to explain it to you guys, especially for the people that are not as experienced with the game of basketball and want to try to understand it better. That to me is like the purpose of this show. Any early thoughts on any of the prospects in the top of the draft? So I have not looked at the draft at all yet. As soon as we get out of the NBA Finals, I will turn my attention to the draft, and we will do scouts on most of the players in the lottery. So just keep an eye on my Twitter feed, and then obviously the YouTube channel as we get into late June. How did you get into podcasting about basketball? I've heard your stories of college hoops and your time doing real estate, but when/how did you fine-tune what you knew about basketball to become a commentating analyst? So again, I would say if you guys want to hear a little bit of a background of me getting into real estate, or excuse me, not real estate. I don't know why I said that. Like I said, I'm brain fried. If you want to hear me breaking down how I got into podcasting, I went on the Ethan Strauss podcast, the House of Strauss podcast, about a month and a half ago. And so I think you can actually get to that for free on his YouTube channel. So just go to the House of Strauss YouTube channel and you can find that there. In terms of just the specific details about the podcast space, I always wanted to do something in sports media, but I was really confused as to how to get my foot in the door. So I was doing some blogging through sites like Fansided, and then I did like a little bit of just like rudimentary like behind the scenes inquiries into like, can I get into a radio station? Can I get into a broadcasting school? Like, what can I do? And I was having a lot of trouble with that. And then what happened was a guy named Jason Maples, who's a basketball coach out in California, he had a podcast called Temple of Hoop, and he invited me on, and I did it as a guest. and I just loved it. And so then I was like, I just want to do this. So I just bought a microphone and I just started doing Periscope streams from my Twitter feed. And then I would take the audio and I would release them onto a podcast feed through through just a podcast hosting platform. And I just slowly built it up. And then I started covering the Lakers as like half the show. So like half the show was covering the whole league. Half the show was this show called State of the Lakers that I did with Raj Chapalu. And we would just do instant reactions after Lakers games through a platform called Twitter Spaces. And Twitter Spaces, and again, I get into more detail with this with Ethan Strauss, but it was just a really powerful algorithm that allowed me to get a lot of exposure. And what happened is we did so well on Twitter Spaces that we actually crashed the app. And when we crashed the app, that's when the volume reached out to me behind the scenes, and I started to talk with Logan, who's our head of content. And we kind of built out an idea for what the show was going to look like, and the rest is history. And from there, like in terms of what the show kind of started as and what it became, we started as Lakers Tonight, right? But like I always wanted to cover the entire league. That was always the goal. And so as soon as the Lakers got eliminated that year, we rebranded as Hoops Tonight, and we went out to cover the rest of the league. And honestly, like for me, it was always just about telling the story of basketball games, right? Like when a team wins or loses, there's usually a reason why. And I just want to like tell that story, right? And honestly, like I've learned a lot more about NBA basketball over the course of the last couple of years, just doing this for a living and like legitimately watching the hours and hours and hours of film that I watch, talking to the people behind the scenes that I talk to. Like it's helped me learn more. And so I talked about this a little bit in our last mailbag, but I feel like I'm getting better at it, which is cool because like I don't feel like I understood the game as well as I did a couple of years ago. And like I feel like that's what we're all at, right? We're all learning about the game from people that know more about the game, right? And like and we're all just kind of like you need to pick people's brains, and you need to get out of your comfort zone and try to educate yourself on this kind of stuff. And what I'm excited about is to see where the show is in like 5 years. I'm excited to see if I have an even better understanding. I'm excited to see just like where the show is in terms of the audience. Like I've been blown away. Like I didn't expect. I've been doing this for it's been about 2 years and 3 months, right? And we've done over 30 million views on YouTube. So like I've been completely blown away by the support you guys have thrown my way, and like I said, I just feel incredibly fortunate and humbled by where we're at now compared to where we've been, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes. But again, yeah, if you guys want to see like a more detailed version of kind of like my background, go to the House of Strauss podcast, and you guys can see it there. You can find it on YouTube on the House of Strauss YouTube channel. Hey, Jason, with Vando's injury, do you trust him to be the starting and closing three next season? I think they need a Finney-Smith type of wing, and he and Bridges are too expensive. Is there another wing on the market that you would like on the Lakers roster? So I think there's two different ways that the Lakers can go this offseason. They can look for an upgrade at the three, or they can look for an upgrade at the guard position. If they get a substantial upgrade at the guard position, so say they get a DeJounte Murray, then I do think Jared Vanderbilt is perfectly fine as the starting small forward on the team, right? Because LeBron is a really good shooter at this point. Austin Reeves, deadly shooter. DeJounte Murray just had the best shooting season of his career. Like, I think Jared Vanderbilt, especially in a 5-out attack, would be functional there. Anthony Davis would need to continue to work on his jump shot and try to polish that up some more. But I think the defensive upside of that would be more than worth it, right? Because now you're running a lineup with DeJounte Murray, excellent defender when he wants to be. Jared Vanderbilt, excellent defender. LeBron James, excellent defender when he wants to be. And Anthony Davis, potentially the best defender in the world. So that becomes a really good defensive team. And they have dribble penetration from DeJounte Murray. You have three legitimate perimeter shot creators between DeJounte Murray, Austin Reeves, and LeBron James. That to me would be the version of it that would work with Vanderbilt. Now, if you don't upgrade the guard position, then I don't think you can have a limited offensive player at the three in Jared Vanderbilt. So from there, that's where I think they would have to look for some sort of forward upgrade. You could look at a Kyle Kuzma. You could look at a Mikal Bridges like we talked about earlier. Jeremy Grant's another guy I think they could go with there. But they either need to make some sort of substantial offensive upgrade at the three or some sort of substantial athletic upgrade at the guard position. Who are your top 10 players in the NBA right now? I'm not going to do a list right now because this is what we do in the offseason. I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to tell you guys. We do content throughout the offseason, and I typically do some sort of player rankings within the NBA currently, and then I usually do some sort of all-time rankings. We do offseason free agency, draft, all that kind of stuff. We do a ton of content over the course of the offseason, so just when we get out of the NBA Finals, just stay locked in on that YouTube channel. Do you consider Luka the best player in the playoffs right now? I think he's certainly the best player in the playoffs right now. I just think his offensive ceiling is so much higher than Jason Tatum's and I think that specifically that carries more value in the postseason. I do think Tatum's somewhat close, but I think Luka clearly is better than him. Again, we'll see when we get. Actually, I'm going to fast forward to the next question because it was something to do with Luka. Let's see. Will you say Luka is the best player in the world if he wins a championship this year? If not, why not? Because you gave Jokic the crown after winning it last year. I would give Luka the crown if he won the championship this year. I think he's been incredible, especially in this particular series. Like, he has dissected this defense in a way that has been profoundly interesting and fascinating to watch. I think that he's got a lot of challenge in front of him. Like, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the Boston series here in a minute, but like Boston is just a whole other challenge in terms of offensive talent than what Minnesota brings to the table. And think of them as I think Boston's just a better version of the Oklahoma City Thunder in terms of just tons of offensive skill on the floor, but also guys that can play on both ends. The rim protection with shooting in terms of Chet and Kristaps Porzingis. So like Boston's a real challenge. But if Dallas beats Boston in the finals, I would certainly give Luka the credit as being the best player in the world. But again, it's like I have two lists, right? Like I have my in a vacuum list, and then I have my who gets bragging rights list. Bragging rights certainly would go to Luka if they won the title. In a vacuum, like it is really close to me between Luka and Jokic, and I just don't really want to get into it until we get into the offseason. Is Ant even better than Shai? This is the first time in this playoffs that he's playing a tough defense, and he's afraid of MFers in the paint. This is not the first time he's played a real defense. Denver was the 8th best defense in the league all season, and Phoenix was 13th. So it's not like he's been playing bad defenses. They're just schematically different they're physically different defenses in the sense that Dallas has rim protection and Phoenix and Denver did not. So it's more of like matchup-based stuff. I think that one of the things too with Shai is like I was really impressed by Shai's shot making, but he had some limitations this year in terms of his playmaking ability. And Anthony Edwards has been incredibly impressive with his shot making, but I've also been a little bit disappointed in some of his playmaking ability, especially in this series. Now, I would probably still give Shai the edge for right now, based on what we've seen from Ant in this series. But I still think in the long run, Ant is going to pass Shai sooner than later. Like, guys, Ant's 22 years old. Ant is 22. Like, all of the all-time greats don't get it done until they're like 26, 27, 28. Do you have any idea how fucking good Anthony Edwards is going to be when he's 27 years old? It's going to be outrageous, guys. He's going to be so damn good. Like, did we jump the gun on him a little bit? Yeah, probably, myself included. But like, that doesn't change the fact that this kid has the potential to literally rule this league. Jason, why did you write off Luka and Dallas in your preview? Okay, this is literally one of my biggest pet peeves since I got into the business. The first time that it happened was the Golden State playoff run in 2022. I literally picked Golden State in the first round. I picked them in the second round. I picked them in the finals. But I didn't pick them in the Dallas series. I picked, after Luka beat Phoenix, I picked Dallas to beat Golden State in 6 games. And every Warriors fan was like, you didn't believe in us. They're like, I had Warriors fans saying, this is one of the craziest things that I learned when I got into this business. Like, people will straight up lie about what you said. Like, I had Golden State fans like that said that you picked against us in all 4 rounds. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's just simply not true, right? Like I picked Dallas to beat the Clippers this year. I picked Dallas to beat Oklahoma City this year in a razor thin series against another awesome team in Minnesota. I picked Minnesota, and then I laid out in the series preview all the different advantages that Dallas has and all the ways that they could win the series. There's nothing about me writing off Dallas. I've literally never written off Dallas. I had them third in my contender rankings coming into the postseason. I had Denver 1, I had Boston 2, I had Dallas 3. I am a huge believer in what Dallas can do. A lot of my pessimism surrounding Dallas in this series had to do with Luka's injury too. Like, you're going up against this incredibly good defense and Luka's injured, right? Like, that I never didn't believe in Dallas. That's just completely absurd. But again, it's like, I'm used to it now. I've been doing this for a few years, and I understand now that like there are people that just like either like want to create controversy where it isn't there, or like they just want to find a reason to be upset. I don't know what the deal is, but like, again, I take this job very seriously. I don't have a vendetta against anybody. I just want to talk about what my personal opinion is based on the stuff that I've seen. Have the last two games changed your perspective on Anthony Edwards as the face of the league? No, not at all. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to get into it again, but like I just think he's young and he's revealed a specific weakness. He struggles against rim protection and athletic perimeter defense. And a lot of this has to do with the roster too, in terms of having Rudy Gobert on the floor. But if he's going to make it work with Rudy Gobert on the floor, he's going to have to figure out a way to manipulate defenses in pick and roll. And that's just the next step for him. To me, it's like change of pace. Instead of it always being downhill with crazy pace, he's just going to have to learn how to slow down and really manipulate the defense. Do you expect Denver to win another title within the next 4 to 5 years? Or do you think teams like Minnesota, OKC, Dallas, or even San Antonio are improving at too rapid a rate for them to keep up with? Does their loss to Minnesota make you rethink them being the best team since 2019 Golden State? I still think that they're the best team I've seen since 2019 Golden State. Here's why. Nobody's repeated since 2018 Golden State. So like somebody has to be the best, and all those teams lost, right? Like the 2019 Raptors, like I think the 2019 Raptors have a really good case. That was a damn good team. I think the 2020 Lakers have a really good case. That was a damn good team. I wasn't as high on the 2021 Bucks. I think them and the 2022 Warriors were the two worst of those teams. Steph, was unbelievable in 2022, and he carried that team in so many ways. But the second best player on the team was probably Andrew Wiggins. I didn't think that team was particularly good. Just Steph elevated them to another level. Same thing with 2021. It was Giannis elevated them, and if you really look at it, it's you had the injuries in the second round, or Brooklyn probably beats them, right? You end up facing an Atlanta Hawks team led by Trae Young in the conference finals. You end up facing a team that didn't have a top 10 player on the roster, and the Phoenix Suns in the NBA finals. So it's just kind of a weird season post-COVID. But I'd say Toronto, the Lakers, and the Nuggets are and we'll see if Dallas enters into this conversation. I want to see what they do in the next couple rounds. So I'm kind of not counting this season yet. But those are the three teams that I think are the best out of the 5 champions that we've had since the 2018 Warriors team. And I just think, man, it's tough to say, but I still think I'd give a slight edge to Denver over those teams. But again, it's splitting hairs between them and Toronto and that Lakers team. I think one of the interesting things looking forward, if they lose KCP this summer, that would be really interesting, because he's their best point of attack defender, but also a very good offensive player on the weak side in terms of his ability to knock down wide open catch and shoot threes, /closeouts, run in transition, all that kind of stuff. And if they end up losing KCP, I'll be really curious to see if that ends up kind of lowering their ceiling a little bit, because it is kind of a synergy of that 5-man lineup. If they bring KCP back, which I hope they do, if they bring KCP back, I do believe they'll win another title over the next 4 to 5 years. Again, we talk about matchups. What if let's say Minnesota runs into Dallas in the first round next year, and Dallas beats them again? But then Denver catches Dallas in the conference finals and Denver beats them. And let's say Boston ends up catching a Knicks team or something and loses, and Denver ends up getting some favorable matchups and they win the title. I think Denver is so good that they'll just continue to be in the mix, especially with how good Jokic is. And it's only a matter of time over the next 2 or 3 years that they catch some favorable matchups and they find themselves in the finals again. Do you agree with the decision to bench Cat for the entire fourth quarter? It was really this simple to me. Naz Reid had it going. And so if Naz Reid had it going the way that he did, and by the way, Naz Reid hit some threes in that fourth quarter. I think it was just a simple, if you were going to play Karl-Anthony Towns, you'd have to bench Gobert. And we talked about last night some of the defensive issues they could have had if they did that. Hey, Jason, recently started listening. Great stuff. This is the last question. Do you think Luka's ability to score unassisted in ISO and in all three levels is more valuable than Jokic's ability to get high percentage shots at the rim? Perhaps a simpler question, do you think Jokic is the clear number one player in the league, or are we really starting to split hairs between Jokic and Luka? Again, so I think the bragging rights, there's a clear edge for Luka because he's now dissecting the same defense that Jokic struggled with a little bit in the last round. But again, matchups play a big role in that, right? Minnesota had these big-bodied forwards that they could throw at Jokic and then have Gobert on the back line. Minnesota just does not have a big enough, strong enough defender to throw at Luka, right? That's the issue. As far as I talked about this after the Denver series with Minnesota. I saw Jokic as like a clearly discernible level above the rest of the league. I did a whole thing after that series about how I thought he's come closer to the pack for two reasons. He had a really bad defensive playoff run after having a really good defensive playoff run last year, and his jump shot failed him. Minnesota was, because of the coverage and they were staying attached to him on the roll, he had to pop and pick and roll, and he was just not capable of knocking down those pick and pop threes. And so, if Jokic is not a good three-point shooter the way he was last year, the gap has shrunk a little bit. I do think we're splitting hairs when it comes to Jokic and Luka at this point. I still think in a vacuum I lean ever so slightly towards Jokic, but Luka's more or less on that level, and it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. They're if you're Dallas, would you rather have Jokic? No, you love Luka. Luka's your guy, right? So you got a guy who's at the very least at the same level as the best players in the league, and that's going to give you a damn good chance to win a lot of basketball games over the next several years. All right, guys, that is all I have for this mailbag. I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow morning with an instant reaction to Celtics-Pacers Game 3. I will see you guys then.